No, 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 I was just kidding. Don't film TikToks. Abolish all TikToks.
You sound like a Jew.
Hello, I'm your favorite faceless coward, CraftyAndy. Remember that song that came out a few weeks ago? Richmond, Cowboy Curtis. Well, anyways, the video I did on that song was a huge hit, and now Oliver Anthony is continuing his work, directing all our anger at the right targets, our owning class oligarchs. Nah, I'm just kidding. He's just making shitty talking points on Twitter.
People's crying about burning coal, but not the poor souls who's digging it. I reckon there's been a many a good man in the grave trying to keep our houses lit. Down in the oil fields, the pipelines, the linemen, the coal mines, so we can sit at home and plug in newfangled bullshit.
Right, because moving away from fossil fuels and pushing for things like universal health care and a fairer working wage is just a selfish, self-serving act that wouldn't help out any of the dwindling number of coal mine workers who haven't been laid off or die of black lung yet. Hey, remember when those jobs were supposed to come back 7 years ago? Well, Arby's employs more people, so maybe we should start demanding that those people also get better pay and benefits too, considering all these companies can afford it, and I'm pretty sure people like Oliver know that. Anyone watching this video knows that. It's pretty much common sense. He also went on the Joey Rogaine show.
You know, like it talks in the Bible about.
But I ain't going to waste my time with that shit. Instead, I want to waste my time reacting to comments that I got in the last video.
Let's cut to the chase with the two personal stories shared with me that inspired me to make this video. I get no one is arguing to abolish welfare entirely. Mostly it's chipped away at more and more, with the argument being that too many people are taking advantage of it that shouldn't be on it. Or at least that's how they state it usually. Sure, people take advantage of it.
So fucking what?
How much do our ruling oligarchs take advantage of corporate welfare to fuck us all over, as opposed to people just living out their days, mainly minding their own business? Like, was there ever a great financial crash I missed? Did that happen sometime between 2000 and 2008? Let's break it down into numbers. That's always fun. $127 billion is spent on SNAP benefits versus the $773 billion military budget, $277 billion on law enforcement, with 65 out of 300 of the nation's largest cities spending 40% of their own budgets on policing on average. 42 million people are on benefits, roughly 13% of the population. Estimates of fraud are about 2 to 10% of that. So the highest estimate is 4.2 million people. To the entire United States population, that is 1%. Which is about the level at which I care about poor people taking advantage of food assistance programs compared to how we are all collectively and actively getting fucked over by the ruling owner class. Think about it. At the highest level of estimated fraud in regards to financial and food welfare benefits, we have the defrauding of tens of millions of dollars spread across millions of people, as opposed to all the times a handful of people defrauded the entire country of hundreds of billions of dollars, pay out settlements, and still remain in business. Bank of America, which has 17 board of directors and 3 CEOs, paid out a record-setting settlement for its role in the Great Depression starting in 2008 with the housing market crash. They settled at $17 billion and are still doing just fine in operations. No one went to jail, and the government didn't come in and break them up. Currently, their net worth is still at $219 billion. This beat Chase Bank, which settled at $13 billion for the same reasons, defrauding people with bad loans and taking advantage of their financial situation. With those facts in mind, let's get into the first story shared with me. From Bio Blaze Payne. Lived on welfare my whole life. Yes, they do give you an abundance of food. I beg to differ, but let's put a pin in that. Yes, they do provide you with options to not work so you can make more food stamps and help from welfare. You're obviously not poor, and by I mean poor enough to even know what you're saying. I've had to get my food from food pantries, sit at a church, and pray to whatever God they had, so I could buoy my head, deeply stretch out my hands, and receive some food. I stopped your video at 4 minutes and 52 seconds after you've sat there and just talked shit about random crap for no reason. Alright, the song has a small section about the boogeyman welfare, kings and queens. How is talking about welfare random crap? But I'll just comment below as I listen to the rest of them. But as it stands now, you're wrong. Wrong use of your, by the way. Also, it isn't just one state doing this kind of shit. I lived in Florida, Wisconsin, Texas, California, and dozens more through that. Best food you get legit is from the food pantries. Free venison was so nice. Since I don't hunt to be able to eat deer, I miss it. Being so old now, I would rather have a empty fridge paycheck to paycheck than go to the food pantry to take food out of some kid's mouth that was like me years ago. Well, I admit, I did do some self-reflecting after reading that comment, and let me tell you, I felt like an idiot. Looking back at the first year and a half out on my own, living with my yet-to-be husband 1, we could have qualified for food assistance easy while in Michigan. I was working part-time at Walmart, and husband 1 was working part-time and attending college from 2011 to 2013, roughly at $7.50 an hour. Considering we were expected to pay rent to live in the stepbrother-in-law's basement that can't achieve a temperature above 55 degrees no matter the season, making under $2,000 a month, we would have easily qualified for some kind of food assistance. I broke down our budget, and after rent and insurance, we roughly had $250 a month after setting $200 aside for food and gas. For a year and a half, that could have definitely relieved some stress on us. Even when working in commission sales for that network marketing scam company, we would have qualified for assistance. Less than $2,000 a month, easy. Not like anyone tells you this shit. Not my husband, stepbrother, my parents, the father-in-law who was our neighbor at the time. Never did anyone bring up the idea of seeking governmental assistance. Makes me wonder, would we have stayed instead of moving out of state if we were made comfortable enough? Like, after we moved into our second place in Cadillac, Michigan, I would still likely dump the sales job to get back into retail or fast food, the only real choices up there. Would it have allowed me to have more time to make an online career doing videos and art like I am now? Making just enough for rent and utilities. Work would have been walkable when the current car would inevitably break down to an unaffordable repair state when the timing belt snapped. We wouldn't be able to afford to go outside of town much, if at all, outside of maybe visiting family once in a while, and that'd be it. But we didn't consider that. We took a huge endeavor and risk moving out. At one instance, when it was just me living by myself, while my first husband established himself in Ohio for my arrival after I found a job down there, I would have to make $20 stretch the entire week waiting for a huge payout from a sale. For food, a friend left me with some turkey he got from his family reunion. It was nearly 2 weeks old at this point. I was picking out the parts to eat that weren't gray or green. Working a commission insurance sales job through a network marketing company that required me to drive directly to clients while I had no car insurance or gas. I considered if I could accidentally forget to pay at the pump as an option. If I did get into an accident around this time, that would have been a $5,000 fine and a loss of my license. Care to explain how one would recover from that? I just happen to have a friend who has that experience and still hasn't managed to pay it off themselves, struggling to find work that public transit can get them to. By the way, it's fucking disgusting how expensive it is to be poor, too. How by design you are paying more for interest in loans, laundromats, renting storage, paying for rides, smaller amounts of product as opposed to buying in bulk, the payday loan cycle. Our status would go on for a few more years because even if you do start making better money, you gotta recover from late bills and debts. Getting a moving van and moving our shit down itself, without the gas, was $550. Can you afford that on minimum wage? Addressing your earlier statement, I do know what it's like to be poor. Also, I know people personally in this regard that I'll get into, but before that I want to focus on the story you shared about yourself. Being so old now, I would rather have an empty fridge paycheck to paycheck than go to the food pantry to take food out of some kid's mouth that was like me years ago. Well, the impression I get is that you're at the point now where you have no choice but to take governmental assistance rather than it be optional. Well, that is your choice. What is the alternative? You starve? If you can't qualify for a trade school and get a career going that way, then what? Are we expected to have a sense of pride over working shit jobs for shit pay all our lives? So, I mean, whatever. You lived your life. You are surviving. Might as well continue to survive. I don't know, find some hobbies if you can. Or take some interests. Because, I mean, if you're working a job and the boss is getting paid more than you, then that is wage theft. How about a poem I stole off the internet? The boss makes $1, I make a dime. That's why I shit on company time. Now the boss makes 1,000 while I make a cent, and he's got employees that can't make the rent. When the CEO makes $1 million and we don't make jack, that's when we riot to take it all back. Now, Mr. Investor, if that seems extreme, I have to remind you it beats the guillotine. These ideas are not from some commie manifesto. It emerged from the common blue-collar worker. Hell, as bad as it is right now, in order to even have the 40-hour work week and benefits, at least the ones that are left, people fought open gun battles against militia and the National Guard, paid by the company. If you can't live on the wage given, that's theft of your time and energy. Not saying to anyone to just quit your job, since that is the situation with nearly all available jobs, including the one I work, especially since most people, too, are 1 or 2 weeks away from starvation. As sure as the sky is blue and my shit is brown, that is how things are. There is no justification for the pyramid arrangement we have going on in work hierarchies. The only thing we get are compromises from union and governmental pressure. Not so much now, it seems, these days. Now, as far as getting an abundance of food, I'll admit my mistake is giving the impression people don't milk the system. I do understand those types of people are out there, somewhere. I just don't give a shit. I imagine most will be in agreement when I say I'm against corporate welfare. I'm pretty sure we all are. Bailing out the banks and car companies every time they fuck the economy over with bad business practices and decisions, assuming we accept the premise. Whose fault is it that these institutions are too big to fail? Until that's taken care of, I couldn't give a flying shit less that someone is exploiting the government over their monthly average of $239 a month for food assistance. If it's a couple, it's around $500 a month. Kids add a little more. Remember, at most, when it comes to fraud, it's 2 to 10%. And these people are doing it just to live. These people are not constructing leaky pipelines, making the groundwater flammable.
Holy unbelievable! A river on fire!
At least what groundwater is left. Lobbying the government to remove company regulations as if that's ever led to more jobs and better pay. Sorry, I'm not sold on this idea that people on welfare are on easy street. Because I know too many on it and met plenty of seniors relying on it too, even paired with their social security that they get. $500 a month is roughly what my parents spent on groceries in the late 90s and 2000s for a family of 5. I can only imagine how much you have to try and stretch that out now if on benefits alone, considering I currently am in a family of 3, that includes me, and we spend $200 to $300 every 2 weeks on groceries alone, not including the occasional fast food run. Not sure what you pictured my takeaway should be from your tale. Glad things worked out for you, and you weren't merely having to beg for handouts and rely on the fickle moods of people being charitable. Like, oh no, you could have been a dedicated McDonald's worker and get a $300 bonus after working 30 years at the company that's worth over $200 billion. Next we have the ElectricBEARD. The fact that you're willing to believe that there aren't folks milking the system means you know just enough to know how the system is supposed to work versus how it actually works. I never said no one was milking the system. I just said the suggestions people on the system are living glorious lives is a ridiculous fantasy. The problem being that the flaws actively encourage gaming of the system. I personally know 3 people that are on welfare and will have permanent access to it as long as no one turns them in for either selling their food stamps for drugs or to get their hair done because they doctor shop around to find the one that helped them get disability for anxiety, thyroid, and depression respectively. all work under the table off and on. One gets $700 a month in disability payments, one gets $1,500, and one $1,300. The one getting $1,500 is married with 3 kids, the husband doesn't work. They live with their parents and are getting $600 in food stamps, which is well beyond what folks are normally getting. The one getting $1,300 has 1 kid, married, husband works part-time jobs, they're claiming, told me and my wife to do the same when we were struggling. They're separated and he doesn't help. They get $450 in food stamps a month. The one getting $700 has no kids, lives with her parents, and is getting $200 a month. The sad thing is, I know of way more people doing this. My ex-wife can no longer get food stamps since she tried getting them with a new boyfriend, who was working full-time construction and has a kid, by claiming we were still together, although I had remarried already. Meanwhile, while me and the wife were struggling, we applied and qualified for $60 a month in food stamps. I made under the amount. We were told by the one girl, hey, if you want more, claim you're separated and he doesn't help you with rent or lights. You've got a kid, you'll at least get $350. I wish I were lying. The problem is the fact that if you're working and on them, if you get over $100 or $200 worth, which actually helps, you're afraid to get a raise or earn more than what you're getting because 5, 10, or 20 over one month and you're at risk for losing them completely. So many feel paralyzed and shouldn't. It's something that if folks need, by all means, use it, but too many that need it can't get it, and too many that don't need it get it. So maybe just break this down. Alright, so if I get this right, we have one couple with a kid making $1,750 a month in benefits, plus some part-time work, so roughly $2,500 to $3,000, and then the other person's living with their parents, and they make $700 a month on benefits, plus $200 it sounds like, so $900. Are you for fucking real? Yeah, you have enough for food, I guess. Maybe sell some off for drugs or what I call life relief. But what about anything else? I say take your friend's advice, separate, and tell them that you're not getting any help. I'm not saying a lie. No, did you see that? Did you hear me? I say actually separate and not get any help. I would never recommend defrauding the government or lying to them like that. No, that would be against TOS. And going back to those previous amounts, $900 for 3 people with the one woman living with her parents, like a NEET, okay, and then $3,000 with 2 people and a kid. Let me tell you, $1,750 is not enough to even cover the rent for the last 3 places I lived at. The cheapest being $900 a month. And really, any system in place is going to have exploits and corruption. Doesn't sound like you plan on snitching on any of them. Almost like there might be a concern of what would happen if they got cut off, were arrested, or both. There's not going to be some award for your honesty and letting yourself get fucked over like this. If a company is not paying you enough to make up the difference, then they are stealing from you. I emphasize that a boss paying more to themselves than everyone else is stealing. Hell, not paying for the miles you travel to and from work is theft too. That takes time out of your day and maintenance for your vehicle if you have to drive, right? None of my jobs ever paid that either. Again, I'm not expecting everyone to just start protesting when they are only 1 or 2 weeks away from starvation. If a wannabe business owner takes out a $100,000 loan to start a business, everyone he hires should be willing and able to take on that loan collectively and be a co-op. As far as I'm concerned, that's the only business venture I see as legitimate. The rest are essential services covered by tax dollars, or should be covered, such as mail, public transport, medical, school, reforms and corrections, as opposed to just punishment, prison, and college. If that one person who's making $700 a month wants to live with their parents and live like some kind of NEET, so fucking be it. Like, again, you're not really selling me on this idea of going on benefits. Like, okay, let me just get both my husbands, we'll quit all our jobs, and we'll move in with my parents, we'll go on benefits, we'll go from our current amount to $2,000 a month or whatever, can't do anything else, can't afford anything else, sell off some of our food stamps for, I don't know, drugs and alcohol, if we want some fun for the weekend, and that'll be about it. What a sales pitch. I met plenty of people on their own benefits, whether it's Medicaid, Social Security, or the traditional food stamps. The ones I've met were rural northern Michigan, also known as the Southern North. Many poorly educated people waving Confederate flags, some actual Nazi flags, living in rundown towns. I was told not to leave anything outside I didn't want stolen. When I worked with seniors involving their insurances and finances, I met plenty of well-off individuals, I met plenty of rich individuals, and I met plenty of people we couldn't do anything for because they were on Medicaid. A few examples I have was a couple who had to decide whether to afford bread or electricity some weeks. Another was a couple who had a special filtration system for their home and couldn't travel outside for long without oxygen because when they were farmers, they were exposed to chemicals related to Agent Orange. I remember stepping up to a house that was dilapidated as fuck, and we talked with the owner for a moment, and she mentioned that her glasses were covered by Medicaid, and some of her health was. And as we walked away, my work partner, my manager at the time, was commenting, "Well, yeah, of course you don't need anything we got. Everything's taken care of for you by the government." These are people living in rundown homes in their 50s to 70s. Like, okay, should they go work for their benefits? Should they just have to deal with poor eyesight because they can't whip out $600 for a pair of prescription glasses? Go back to school and get into a trade at 65? Go back in time and get an abortion instead of having a few kids in their teens or 20s? Like, what is the alternative? Can you motivate someone who should be retired to scrap for their medical care? We had a friend who was off and on homeless. Grew up as an orphan and aged out of the system in LA. Mid-30s, can only work low skill level jobs. And while he has a job, he would get $700 in benefits a month. Couldn't work beyond 30 hours, and why should he? If he was working full-time at the rate a lot of these places pay, $12, he'd lose the $700 a month in order to make an extra, $480? So make less money and have less free time. What a deal! I can also say with confidence a trade is out of the question. He's street smart, but nothing beyond that. You can thank the underfunded inner city schooling system for these results. Can't say I'm impressed. Can't even drive without having a mental breakdown, according to him. Have to go in and out of shelters, can only afford to live where a social worker might find for you. Oh yeah, living the high life. By the way, why do we need a 40-hour work week? All these corporations are worth billions of dollars. They can afford to hire more people with less hours, better wages, and benefits.
For example, in Canada, a 4-day workweek pilot just wrapped up, and the results are encouraging. 41 companies who participated in the trial have all agreed to continue the work model. And interestingly enough, what they found was this. Revenue increased by 15% over the course of the trial. Working hours were reduced an average of 38 to less than 33 over the course of 12 months. Burnout was reduced by 17%. Mental health improved by 17%. Life satisfaction by 16%. And work-life balance obviously improved by a whopping 35%.
How many stories are out there right now about people finishing the work they have to do for the day in a matter of a few hours and then have fuck all to do for the next 6.5? And the ones that actually do have to work a full shift, like I do in my job, is there like some sense of pride working a slave wage job that's not paying you enough? Is there some mindset that I never got when I did those jobs back in the day? Such as working midnights at Walmart and then going to a sawmill in the morning and stacking lumber for another 8 hours? Why not just stamp the company's logo on your forehead while you're at it? If you're going to defend these corpos by putting the overworking hours on a pedestal. There's another friend of mine whose mother is a prime example you are talking about when it comes to milking the system. Possibly. It's just her and her 3 boys in a 2-bedroom apartment. Their diet was mostly skim milk and cheese pizza. She was always trying to bum cigarettes off me when I don't smoke. I always had to remind her I don't smoke every time I came over. Apparently she has a bad knee or some shit. Thinking about this, what's the alternative at this woman's age of her 40s, or if not higher at this point? Aside from possibly finding a man that can lift her out of poverty, what, she gonna go back to school and take out a loan that can never be paid back in her lifetime? Gonna start her career as a nurse? Cut off all the benefits entirely, and what? She works part-time for some shit company making a shit wage, doing stock work or hard labor, not being able to afford anything? She and the family going to learn the work ethic of collecting cans for the deposit over the weekends? Do all these businesses have unlimited job offers, by the way? And I love when people would always say, just move. Just move. Okay, well, for me to find the proper work in order to afford our way of life and to live, generally speaking, we had to spend $550 for a moving van. That didn't include gas. And that gas had to cover an 8-hour trip from northern Michigan to Ohio. And we had to rent a car on top of that in order to drive up there to get the van, because it would have been a lot more expensive to drive the van that many more miles. I also have 2 other different friends who grew up and their mother would medicate themselves with alcohol and drove their sons out into the streets as teenagers for either being queer or just being late coming home to a rented out house that should be condemned, with one having to pull tricks in order to get some bread. I also have another friend who supports their children through his disability and working odd jobs on the side. Like, if his benefits were just cut off, would he just magically find a better job? Would the pay just somehow increase? Would he somehow be able to work even harder and therefore somehow it also equal more money? Better paying jobs don't just materialize when these things are cut or removed. If anything, the corporations that are telling their workers to sign up for food assistance, like Walmart, will just start telling them to huddle together in one place, 6 at a time, and pool their resources before they start paying employees more an hour. The point of all this is to demonstrate, I get this idea, there are people taking advantage of shit, or rather perceive that they are. I don't think any of my examples, including the comments I went over, even count. This is just small-scale shit. And until it's addressed at the highest levels, should there even be any concern about those at the bottom 2 to 10%? It's not like cutting these benefits, getting people off them, or just getting rid of these people altogether, entirely, will magically give us all raises, lower our tax burden, which is the lowest out of the rest of the world, by the way.
We gotta be the most taxed people in the world. What do we got there? Really? 8% is the average tax burden? If we're mad, those 38% paying meatball-eating scandies must be absolutely outraged.
I love to pay my taxes.
We don't have to worry about insurances.
Daycare for our kids, free school.
When you go give birth, it's almost free.
Things in Finland's government-issued baby box that just make sense. All the pads for your new leaking body. Condoms so you don't pop out another one right away.
2022, Americans paid almost $5 trillion to the government in federal taxes alone. So what do we get?
I've spent many days on the phone crying with the insurance because I can't not let my daughter have her medicine.
There was no way I was going to be able to ever afford daycare. No vacation, no benefits.
$65,000 in student loan debt.
I can't afford to retire.
I feel like I will be in debt for the rest of my life.
Speaking of taxes, enjoy those tax cuts we got under Trump? Well, for businesses, it's permanent. For the rest of us, those are going away in 2025. Hey, Mitch McConnell, Bitch Mitch, you gonna do anything about that?
It's been good bipartisan cooperation and a string of
Wait a minute. Are you good, Mitch?
Okay, Mitch?
No.
In 26. How so?
Running for re-election in 2026? All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute.
All right. Biden. Joe Sleepy alleged rapist. I said alleged. Joe Jack Biden. Are you going to do anything about that?
You guys catch the boots out here?
No? All right, Trump. We get you back in. You going to do something about those tax cuts? Actually, maybe extend them permanently for the working class?
I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age. At any age.
Quick, shoot me in the face!
I get the overall sentiment is just trying to get people off of them that supposedly shouldn't have them. Well, again, I don't care when we live in a country that is full of so much drudgery. Tedious working conditions for little pay, unnecessary lengthy hours, and work days. Some countries are experimenting with a 4-day work week, but it's so fucking slow. Come on, you only live once. Get this shit figured out now, please. Having social programs is a good way to at least avoid having as many roaming gangs of people breaking into homes, strong-arming businesses, and pimping out kids for pocket change. Not as many as the early 1900s, at least. I am under no illusion that my current position in life could last forever. If I am ever in a position where I have to work retail and customer service again, I'm going on welfare instead, because fuck you, that's why. Double the wage it currently is, and now consider it. Compared to what the owner class is doing with not paying a fair wage and taking markets for short-term gains, it's a pebble in an ocean. If the bosses are paying themselves more than they pay everyone else, they are stealing from your labor and time. Think of the character Rico from Midnight Cowboy, talking about his father who worked as a shoe shiner in the subway.
Hey, you're pretty damn good at that. I bet you could make a living at it if you tried.
And I'm not a hunchback like my old man. You think I'm crippled, you should have caught him at the end of the day. My old man spent 14 hours a day down in that subway. He'd come home at night, $2-3 worth of change stained with shoe polish. Stupid bastard coughed his lungs out from breathing in that wax all day.
Rico's father lived and died in squalor, leaving his son in squalor. Because how do you move oneself up from a shoe shiner? How often is that cycle repeated in this fucking country, I wonder? How many people grow up in poverty and then in turn their children grow up in poverty and never build themselves up out of poverty? What chance do the lot of us have, really, being born at the bottom? I can only imagine the existential dread a person can have if they ever consider the fact that they may not have anything to look forward to. Only room for one store manager there, buddy, and that role is going to the current boss's nephew. Think your movie idea will get picked up for millions? Likely not. Want to publish your book? Know someone in the industry or have a lot of money? Think today's billionaires started poor? Think elected officials do more than pander to social issues while lining their pockets with corporate donations? More of this realization is probably a reason we see such a spike in suicides on top of people burning out on drugs. Because when you have to work a bunch of shitty jobs in order to make do, and you have no time for yourself in any way, have no time to enjoy a hobby or indulge in some interest, maybe, I don't know, learn some science, learn some history, work your way towards pursuing something greater than what you have. So much is circumstance. I was raised middle class, went to a well-funded public school, had friends with some foresight when it came to our futures, which in turn led me to take risks in social situations, relationships, and work ventures. Passed as straight, was able to carry my whiteness around, and this is skimming over the fact that a lot of friends pushed me in certain situations that would improve my social capability and working position. When it came to my third serious relationship, I could have gotten myself out of that relationship easy. I could have lived off my parents easy. I just didn't want to do that, sacrificing time with friends, family, and entertainment so I could work on art projects in the form of drawings and videos while maintaining my passionate pursuits through jobs that can pay the bills. I'm just stupid that way, I guess. I envy those who can just coast by and are content with the daily grind and just lose themselves in a multiplayer online game 8 hours a day every day. For me, I figure eventually there will come a point after seeing so many movies, reading so many books, and playing so many video games, I'll be bored of all of it. And I don't want to be in my 60s looking back and asking myself, what if I actually tried? I'd rather fail pursuing my dreams than be a successful slave. It's not about making money, fame, or clout. It's about experience and perspectives and sharing those experiences and perspectives. Again, circumstance and luck play such a disgusting amount in this. Anyone saying otherwise is a fucking liar. Who knows how much more accomplished I'd be if I didn't waste time hating myself over my queerness? How much energy do I waste concerning myself with whether or not I should stick around this country when organizations are jockeying for position to fuck my right to exist away?
The social conservative wish list calls for ending abortion, diversity and inclusion efforts, protections for LGBTQ people, and most importantly, banning any and all LGBTQ content. In fact, the mandate for leadership makes eradicating LGBTQ people from public life its top priority. Its number one promise is to restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. They are explicit in how they plan to do so. As you'll see in the paragraph below, they plan to proceed by declaring any and all LGBTQ content to be pornographic in nature.
What was this for? Oh yeah, responding to comments. Well, first, I want to say thanks to all those who gave me positive feedback and others who wrote small novellas in the comment section. I'm sure they're all brilliantly written and have no errors whatsoever.
The fact that anybody wants to take this man's words and twist them up just makes me think that your ulterior motives or self-centered and well self-centered. The fact that you feel that you need to degrade somebody who has made a great fucking phone just speaks to your ill intentions, and stop trying to interpret his words. Bravo. Bravo. Next Stephen King right here. I also didn't know Oliver Anthony made phones.
Shout out to Mad Tracker for your efforts in dealing with some of the other commenters on the page. I appreciate the expanding of engagement. Now let's just have some fun with the rest of these.
You can argue all these issues, but at the end of the day, you're either on the rich 0.001% side or the other. There's a war being waged at the middle class in America, and left and right had better wake up and stop being separated by the media and government. Smith7120, I'd say, is pretty spot on. As a great man once said,
you have owners. They own you. They own everything. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club.
It's frustrating how close a lot of people seem to get before pointing to the wrong thing, too. It's the queers, the immigrants, the Jews, or a combination of various hidden state powers. It's not that fucking complicated. It's money interest. We live in a capitalist society, therefore money is power. It's Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, the remaining Koch brother, and the rest of the 756 billionaires that exist hiding their agendas? No, they want no regulation for industries. They are rolling back child labor laws, doing all they can to neuter union power, except for police union power. There's even talks to bring back company towns. Remember company towns? Remember how great those were?
Operators often paid workers in company currency called scrip. They forced mining families to shop exclusively at the company store, which they stocked with food, fuel, and clothing. Even the tools and blasting powder required on the job. They set the prices of all those goods to assure a profit.
Ultimately, they also seek to strip away Social Security and Medicare.
It will be my objective to phase out Social Security, to pull it up by the roots and get rid of it. Here,
When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government.
That for future retirees, people under the age of 45, we should absolutely raise the retirement age. I'm going to say something very provocative. I'm not a fan of retirement. I don't think retirement is biblical.
And then you have CEOs like Tim Gurner.
Yeah, people decided they didn't really want to work so much anymore through COVID, and that has had a massive issue on productivity. And we need to see that change. We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40, 50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. There's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment.
If you want to know what I truly think, I say people like this are standing a head too tall. Not calling for violence. I'm just saying they could use a little shave up top, that's all.
I'm building the world's largest lemonade stand to quench the masses' growing thirst for blood. You just cut this watermelon in half.
The majority of conservatives nowadays are working class people who are sick of university educated fools looking down their noses at them, spouting rubbish like men can have babies, sexuality is something to be proud of, and worship black criminals who have died while getting arrested. Conservatives just want the country to get back on track, for people to stop rewriting history, and for people such as yourself to stop causing division.
Some people are really fucking stupid.
Glowed, most people are live and let live, which is in itself a progressive position. Most people's primary concern is to have the ability to afford some food for themselves and their families, being able to have a roof over their head, and the ability to achieve retirement at a reasonable age. I'd say 50 is a good standard. Right now the talk is pushing it to 70, if not higher. You're the one reacting negatively to trans people existing. Gender is a social construct. It's something made up. That being said, though, how does that fact affect your ability to live? What does that have to do with being able to work a job and make a living for yourself? Why is it your concern? As far as worshiping black criminals, no one is worshiping black criminals. Going up against police brutality and government overreach is not worshiping black criminals. Rewriting history, the only ones trying to rewrite history are conservatives, trying to pretend that slavery wasn't as bad as it was, that the country did not kill a bunch of Native Americans in order to claim it, and that the civil rights movement was all peaceful, hunky-dory, let's get along type of movement. So stop causing division and get with the fucking program. YouTube needs a thumbs down button. I think they have one. In reaction to my statement about Owen Benjamin, we have Jason XOC. How does putting the song title in parentheses, not brackets, insinuate he's talking about Jews? You realize that pulling random comments doesn't represent what everyone thinks. Just like playing a quote from a movie doesn't represent what everyone thinks. I mean, you have to really try to come to those conclusions, man. Tell me this. Who says that the Jews run the world and we should have Christian white men running the world instead? What percentage of people share that opinion? Because one person saying something stupid shit doesn't represent the sentiment of a group or many groups of people. It's silly. Look up Echo Dog Whistle. No one normally writes like that, and that's besides the fact that this Benjamin fellow is still making a claim that an influx of migrants is somehow destroying the ability to make a living, as if they have the power to determine the policies our country is run on. The phrase, according to their religion, they have a right to turn you into cattle. Whose religion? Common anti-Semitic belief that is how Jewish people see non-Jewish people. And if it's not Jews, it's some other vague descriptor like the elusive deep state or ruling elites with no further elaboration. What percentage of the people believe this? 100% of the people named Owen Benjamin. Yeah, as far as who the ruling elites are, they are the fucking corporations that lobby and run the fucking country. That's it. It doesn't matter what religion they are or pretend to be. At the end of the day, they're the ones in control, they're the ones running the show. And somehow, magically getting rid of them, pretending they're all Jewish or some other group, that doesn't change how the system operates, because eventually you just be cycling right back through. Look at how the company Ford was run in the early days. Ford was a adamant anti-Semite and worked his workers as hard as he could. The only reason he gave them shorter hours is so they could actually have time to buy cars and drive. Sam Rowland, 2816. I thought you sounded quite sensible at first. Then you started talking about how children aren't being groomed into being trans. There have been multiple whistleblowers from multiple institutions in multiple countries who have said that. This is exactly what's happening. If you make being trans celebrated, then children with no sense of identity who are starved for attention will gravitate towards it. Then you started bringing black and queer people into it, who weren't even mentioned in the song. Bizarrely bad take. Thankfully, you don't have much reach though, and I hope it stays that way, and suspect it will. Oh yeah, thanks for the motivation. Nice how they don't even bother to mention what institutions this involves. It's just the same shit we heard through the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, to today, about how kids are somehow being recruited into being queer.
When you get your balls chopped off, you get free ice cream!
I had more in California after I went homeless and quit my job than when I was working 50 hours a week and paying bills. It's not the same for everyone everywhere across America, but the welfare isn't working the way it should. I was always just a little shy at the end of the month on welfare, and I still have to eat light at the end of the month to make bills working full time. Yeah, and to me that's fucked. Again, do people expect us to have some sense of pride working a shit job for $1 billion company? Is that supposed to make up the difference? It encourages people to hustle and game the system. Working a retail job and maybe becoming manager in 20 years after one dies or moves, as far as I'm concerned, you don't have a business without employees. And if the bosses are paying themselves more than anyone else, it's theft. And what do they do with their billions? Build shoddy submarines, rockets, and tunnels. Then expect a pass because they grace some people with a little charity. We're living in the sequel to the Gilded Age. Wayne. He's such a coward, he can't even show his face. Yeah, says the person without a profile pic. Where's your face?
I wasn't about to tell this dipshit that I have my face in the profile pic, the banner, and dozens of other videos on my channel. He then responded to me 5 more times without any more prompting. Thanks for the engagement, Wayne. With his last response being,
see, this idiot don't care about anything because he's probably living with his mom and dad down in a basement. It doesn't even have a job.
Wow, you got me. I, as in it, don't have a job, and I live in my parents' basement. My only responsibility is to wipe my own ass and put on clothes whenever I go outside. Going outside. Mom, what do I do? What do I do? The dog's jumping on me. Scared me. I'm sorry.
What the fuck is this, white boy? Sounds like Richie Rich.
Yep. Well, you got me. I'm worth billions.
He's making $40K a da, so he has the last laugh. This is a reactionary piece of crap content piece. He can sing about anything he wants. Remember when I said this man needed to be stopped and we need a law for it? Yeah, he can sing about whatever he wants. No shit. Nothing I or anyone else says can stop him, just as much as you and I can say whatever the fuck we want about it, dumb shit. Why the fuck are you so stupid? It's sad that you can't be creative, so you try to steal fame by running down other people. How is criticizing one part of his song declaring the overall message based, and despite its flaws, it should be more about opening the door of discussion with everyone, running him down? Was it the part where I said he's a true creative? And then the same person says, "You're so full of yourself, it's pathetic. Sad wannabe." Well, better to love yourself than to hate yourself. Savage Fox Design had a lot to say, but this one stuck out to me. As an independent, I don't entirely agree with your take. Like about welfare, for instance, a lot of people would rather struggle with an honest living, making too little, than to take handouts from the government. Sure, it works, and it works well for some people, but if we were being honest, we know that the system is being misused on a massive scale at the taxpayer's expense, often those people who work 2 to 3 jobs and refuse government assistance but pay the most taxes. Alright, this sounds like a real younger version of me and my friends. There is no reward for running yourself into the ground, disregarding all your other interests over some faulty sense of pride because you didn't take any government handouts. If you're having to work multiple jobs to squeak by a living when you can instead qualify for assistance, then fucking do it. It's a lot easier than asking help from friends and family like I had to the first few times I started on my own, staring down the barrel of homelessness. Unnecessarily working more hours to help someone else become richer when there's at least an option to subsidize a better living condition is fucking stupid. Not that the people working those extra jobs and hours are stupid. They are victims who are convinced to have an instilled sense of shame when it comes to getting help. Everyone needs help at some point. Do you work to live or live to work? Because I can tell you when I was working 60 hours a week in sales, having little time to do anything other than to do the laundry every week and sleep, I can't imagine ending anywhere other than some bitter, tired old man wishing he did more with his life instead of casting aside all his passions and interests in pursuit of material wealth. Being trapped in such work cycles causes people to have little time to think for themselves, let alone others. It serves well to keep people isolated in their little bubbles and divide us, especially if they are religious on top of that, which also serves as a good mechanism to keep them in line, since the better life is waiting for them after they die, after all. So why stop and think about the system that's crushing you underfoot? You're living in squalor and have a poor education to boot? Well, there are plenty of fast-talking heads at Fox that will point you to the ones to blame for your lot in life.
You've heard a lot about the great replacement theory recently. It's everywhere in the last 2 days. That's what's happening, actually. Let's just say it, that's true.
Wouldn't you like to, I don't know, spend more time with your family? Maybe go fishing a little more? Watch a movie? Or whatever the hell it is that normal people do with themselves these days? Film a TikTok?
Oh, let's go! Gang.
No, I was just kidding. Don't film TikToks. Abolish all TikToks.
You sound like a Jew, pedo. Darren and Ozzy. You missed the point entirely. It's not sun at the perspective of political siding, it's sun from the working man's perspective. I made that clear in the video. What the everyday man sees on a daily basis. Made that clear in the video. Find me one working class man who isn't pissed off with poor wages, high costs, men and women's sports, and trans being taught in schools. Okay, well, you started off okay with the first two subjects, and then you went off the fucking rails real fast. But hey, you sweep it all under the carpet. Let's see how this video ages. Mad Tracker coming in with the appropriate response. Peak information silo perspective coming from someone who claims a song isn't representative of a political bias. And let's not forget, men are not shoving their way into women's sports. That's why they are called trans women. Because they're women. Also, I dare you, Darren and Ozzy, to show us the numbers of trans women in sports. I fucking dare you. And explain to us all why no mention ever of trans men in men's sports, by the way. As far as the first part goes, with people being angry about poor wages and high costs, yeah, no fucking shit. Everyone is angry at that. You think that will unite people more, but then you get distracted about fucking fantasies of men taking over women's sports, a subject that wasn't given a shit about 5 years ago, and it still isn't given a shit about, because the actual issues affecting women's sports never get brought up. Lack of funding, lack of sponsorship, lack of materials to train, and the list goes on. Dead goat. Who left my ass all stop? The training agenda is being pushed by the rich men north of Richmond. Even speaking about it in any way will get you blacklisted. Enjoy your child, nonce groups.
Ah, yes, this person can't help but express the fantasy that he has. A world where pedophilia is just normalized magically. As if you could somehow convince adults that it's okay for other adults to come after their children. I don't know what the argument would be for that. I can't think of one. I guess this guy did. I guess, though, when it comes to the Catholic Church, they get a pass forever, right? It's funny that every day, almost, every week, all these reports come out of people who violate the innocence of children and their trust. And they're all fairly normal looking and often involved in religion. Almost like they want to pass themselves off as everyday people and not bring a lot of attention to themselves.
And it was that this organization was built in a way that molesters could get in, abuse kids, and get away with it. When I first did the stories and said there were 400 cases, people told me I was making a big thing out of nothing.
I'd never taken the deposition of a serial pedophile, and I didn't know what to expect. My question to him is, why did you choose the Boy Scouts? And he said, because they made it so easy. They did nothing, they did nothing to put up barriers for him. And he knew it, and he used it.
I also have a question for people like this. How and when did trans people affect your ability to go about your daily life? You know, go to work, watch TV or stream, whatever, and then sleep. That's generally the routine for most people. How is it that trans people are less than 1% of the population and yet simultaneously able to take over the entire nation somehow? How is it that people like you claim persecution when the only laws that are being passed in states affect trans people? Do queer people in general affect your money's ability to spend? Does it affect the ability to food to grow in the ground? Why is it that you concern yourselves with things like this as opposed to droughts that are threatening us with a food shortage? Assuming you're Christian, why is it that nations in a more shitty state of existence happen to also be the most religious, while the nations that are a little more better off end up being a lot more secular?
I can't believe this dumbass is going to sit there and try to tell us that welfare people can only afford shitty food. I didn't say that at all. That is such a bunch of crap. They only buy shitty food because they're not having to pay for it. I didn't say that at all. I just said that they're not getting a fucking everlasting abundance of it. And they're too damn lazy to go home and cook a meal for the family and the Robbies because you're too damn lazy to get a job. If this asshole doesn't like the song, he doesn't have to listen to it. Keep your head in the sand, dumbass. Well, I mean, I don't have to listen to the song, but in order to decide whether I like it or not, I would have to listen to it, don't I? Just like when it comes to a movie, if I don't like a movie, I wouldn't know that unless I watched the damn movie. This is a retard. Cheap food has to be made from scratch. The expensive stuff is all pre-made. People are fat because they're fat. I guess the genetic expert here, King Dossoff, he knows how people become obese. It's always by choice. No one ever has a disposition to it. And then, likely, someone like this would interpret what I just said as, oh, so no one's responsible for anything. No, everyone's responsible for their own actions. Understanding why those actions happened and where they come from, and the symptoms and the sources that drive those actions is not excusing anyone's responsibility from those actions.
Well, that's enough encouragement for one evening. Go forth and be less of a fucking idiot.
Subscribe, like, comment me ideas and suggestions. Patreon for exclusive art and early videos. Merchandise at the online store. Check out the Weirdsaurus channel for weird furry shit. Pause Off for gaming skits and highlights from live streams that can be found on the Pause Off Live channel. Also check out my friend Uncle Taco on Twitch for some other streaming fun business. Work in Progress is streamed at the CraftyAndy channel. Subscribe, like, and share. You heard what I said. Now see it done.